This is Andi Purewal for ID Boxing. I'm joined by promoter Ben Shalom here in London. Ben, it's been a very long day. We had a 3-hour delay to a press conference. It is now 7 p.m. Hopefully you're lasting to the day. But yeah, we've made it through an exciting day, an exciting press conference as well. Eubank Jr, Smith too, or rather Smith-Eubank Jr too. Yeah, excited to finally have it over the line.
Yeah, I think it's been a long time coming. But it's a great fight. I mean, take the arena, take the size of it, take the box office, take the names away. If Eubank Jr is the Eubank Jr that we know, and if those two camps and that 11 months out of the ring did actually really affect his resilience and his physicality, which it looked like it did, in fairness, then we're just in for a great fight. And ultimately, that's what it comes down to. Of course, there's a huge amount on the line. I think Eubank Jr.'s career at the top level, I'm not saying his career, but a box office level, is in jeopardy. He needs to have a good performance, and he needs to be very different to what he was. And Liam Smith, obviously the slight favourite in my eyes, as he was the first time, but I've said a few times, the same people saying Liam Smith had no chance in the first fight are the same people saying Chris Eubank Jr. had no chance this time. You don't know which one's going to turn up. It's a massive fight, and when you're walking around and you're looking at Chris Eubank Jr. today, and I've been with him today, he's more serious. There's something different. There's something way more focused, and I think it all stems down to he was as shocked as anyone as to what happened. He'll have been searching for the answers, and he's going to be looking to put in his performance of his life on June, and he'll leave everything in the ring.
Obviously, in the build-up to this fight being announced, there was a lot of talk about where Conor Ben fitted into it all and the potential Eubank Jr. Ben fight taking place. Was there ever any doubt in your own mind, Ben, that we wouldn't see Smith-Eubank Jr. too?
There wasn't any doubt because we had a contract, but then when you see so much things in the media, you're thinking, could this really happen? I think from a boxing standpoint, given that the process has to still be going through, I know Eubank Jr. got a massive offer, so he's obviously made a decision, and fair play. And he's probably decided that, and I think boxing is probably relieved in that sense. But again, nothing against Conor Ben. I'm glad that the process is starting, and if he's innocent, then fantastic, because I'd love to see him back in the ring, genuinely. It's just my whole issue was, how can anyone argue there needs to be a process? It can't be happening. And so, the doubt started a little bit. But I just thought, no way, surely not. That would just be crazy. I honestly can't believe that it was being pushed for at the time it was being pushed for. I'm shocked, but nothing should shock me anymore. I think this rematch for us was always contracted in what we thought would happen.
You look towards this fight and you look towards how it could play out. Liam's very adamant on stage. It's going to be as emphatic as the first fight. Junior obviously thinks otherwise and believes that he will reverse the result. What do you think we see?
I think we do see a different Chris Eubank Jr. and that means we're going to see a great fight. This should have always gone a lot longer than it did, but both of them clearly, Liam Smith clearly has knockout power and has the speed and the combinations to hurt Eubank like he's never been hurt before, and that's what happened. It's hard to say. Liam Smith's the slight favourite. He is the favourite, but Chris Eubank Jr, as I say, is a different one. It's hard to make a prediction. I know it's going to be a great fight. It's a bigger fight than last time because Liam Smith's now a box office star, and he wasn't the first time. And there's just so much on the line. And with Marshall Crews, which could headline any show, is one of the biggest fights in women's boxing. For Savannah Marshall to go up to super middleweight and do that straight away, it's going to be a huge night. But yeah, I don't want to make a prediction, but of course I think Liam Smith is the favourite.
Before we come on to Marshall Crews-Dezurn, or Crews-Dezurn Marshall rather, pay-per-view. Some people questioning that decision over social media. Ben, just talk me through your thoughts as to why it's landed on pay-per-view.
I think the first time it was questioned much more heavily. I don't think people felt Liam Smith was box office, or for some reason thought Eubank Jr is going to walk through. It's difficult. We don't want to make fights on pay-per-view. We'd love to make it or not, but sometimes to make the big fights you have to. This is a bigger fight than the first one. Liam Smith's bigger than the first one. There's more on the line for Eubank Jr. This is really it. This is a huge fight, and with Savannah Marshall against Crews as well in the unification and Shelley Hebron, Eubank Smith is unfortunately a massive fight, and when I say unfortunately, it means it costs a lot, and that's just the economics of boxing, and for me it's a bigger fight than the first one, and the first one there was no way we could have not done it on pay-per-view, and we answered that at the time.
Crews-Dezurn versus Marshall, as you mentioned there, Ben. Talk to me about how easy or difficult a fight this was to make, because it was always rumoured in the background. Savannah wanted to invoke a rematch clause with Claressa. We obviously don't get to see that now, and it's very rare we see somebody lose a bout at the weight below for the Undisputed Championship, get the opportunity to move up and fight for another Undisputed crown.
Yeah, but it's women's boxing. We know it's not got the depth, and there's not many huge fights at middleweight, super middleweight division. I think it's an amazing fight. I think we should be glad that the best fighters are fighting the best, and it's quickly. It's not like we're waiting around. Savannah's just gone out of the biggest loss of her career, the only loss of his career, one that will have hurt her more than anything. Over 2 million people watched that fight. She is now one of the most recognisable sportswomen in this country, and she's jumping into an absolute war in a new weight division where I do feel she'll be more comfortable and will show an even better side of herself. But we shouldn't be bemoaning the best fight and the best quickly. Yes, we can say, how does that happen? But ultimately, the women's sport is not as deep as the men's, and Savannah Marshall against Crews. This was the fight that Crews wanted. This was the big fight that Crews wanted. She's the champion. She didn't have a mandatory by the time it was contracted. She wants to. This is a big fight for her as well, and she wants to be on the big stage. She's just seen what happened when Claressa came over here on one of our cards, and she can't wait for it. And that's why this fight is happening. And I think for Savannah Marshall to want to do that straight off a loss, no messing around, she deserves a lot of credit.
Ben, moving away from this card, take me back to this past weekend. Just returned from Poland. What was that show like? Look,
it was an experience. I think for us, we're putting it on a show for Polish TV for the first time, and that's very difficult. They've got a different fan base and they want to see different fights. But for us, it was about Jamie TKV and Martin Bakole in the heavyweight division, and both of them, Martin Bakole for me looked like the ring rust didn't affect him, and he went straight in and showed why we believe he's one of the most talented heavyweights in the world and still in his 20s. And Jamie TKV is the silent horse in the British heavyweight scene. He really is, and the way he's developed has been really good. He wants to be amongst the Wardleys, the Clarks, the Adelays, and that's where he needs to be.
What did you make of Martin Bakole and Dillian Whyte's altercation?
Over the top. Obviously, it's good to see fighter rivalries and things building up, and I think Martin Bakole's name went through the roof last week for whatever reason. But yeah, it went too far in that sort of interview that I saw. Shouldn't be happening. Look, it's funny if you take a step back, because I can't deny that if you take a step back from the situation, it can be humorous, but at the same time, that is a guy, a father and a husband, and I'm sure they'll have to deal with it, and I'm sure they'll deal with it sensibly, and there should be an apology, I think. But it was real, and there was a lot going on behind the scenes, and yeah, I like both guys, and I hope they sort it out.
Is that a fight we could see? Is that one you'll be reaching out to Dillian's team to try and make?
We'd love to make it. But Martin Bakole is a very, very tough fight. Very tough fight for anyone. So if Dillian Whyte will take it, we will give him the best possible offer you could ever have. We think it's a great fight. We think it's a fight both fighters should be confident of winning. And there's obviously what's happened has happened, but let's see.
I've seen people over social media suggest that Martin really needs financial backing behind him to build his profile. It's for one thing he's really lacking now. We know when you guys first come onto the scene with that Sky deal, you was very heavy-handed in the market, shall we say. You came in and you got the fighters you wanted. People were saying that maybe you overpaid for some and what have you. Would there still be a pot there to really push the profile of Mr. Martin Bakole?
Without a doubt, but I think look at how much noise he made in one fight for us in Poland last week. That's the power of this platform. That's the power of what we can do. His name's everywhere. He's a character. I think people are seeing that now. And yeah, it's only a matter of time. But some fighters have to fight their way to the top, and it's a shame that he gets laughed at. But they do. Like Alexander Usyk he's the king of the heavyweight division because of a mandatory. Thank God mandatories exist, and that's where Martin Bakole is going to have to do. And as long as the governing bodies are fair and play by the rules and the regulations, then there's no reason he doesn't get the big fights. Of course, Michael Hunter rematch is a nice fight and a good fight, and probably a fight that fans would like to see first. And I'm more than open to making it. We just want his name in and amongst the big names, and you've seen the noise that can be made through one fight, and that's what happened last week.
There was some noise also mentioned around a certain Deontay Wilder. Ben, I'm sure you've seen Eddie and Matchroom's comments surrounding your suggestions of a potential Bakole Wilder fight. What have you made of what others have had to say?
Look, first of all, it's to be, it's. I have to take it a little bit as a compliment. I'm in my 20s and I've got promoters talking straight after the world title. That's the headline. I think for us, what we're trying to highlight is he is number 2 in the WBA. Deontay Wilder is number 1 without even fighting. If the rules and regulations were followed, we would see a final eliminator or a regular title at some point. Again, mandatories are mandatories. They exist for a reason. This isn't a choice. And that's why we have a sport, not just a business. Otherwise, we just have fun picking. The danger is you go down this route of huge money fights that happen once every 2 years, and the fighters would just never fight each other. And so the fact that it's laughed at shows perhaps where the sport is in being able to fight your way to the top. Any other sport, you can, whether it's tennis or whether it's football, you win enough games and you keep beating people, you get your opportunity. It does happen in boxing. Alexander Usyk is now king of the heavyweight scene through a mandatory position. That's where we're pushing Martin Bakole. We want his name in the big names. We wanted to make noise for him last week, and we did. And very happy about that.
So in your mind then, Ben, how unlikely or likely would you say a potential bout with Deontay Wilder could be?
Impossible in the short term, because why would he choose to fight Martin Bakole? But we have to highlight, and it's our job, he's number 2 and Deontay's number 1, and one day at some point he's going to get his order and he's going to be a mandatory, and he will get the big fight sooner or later. But we just want his name in the mix. As you said, we have to invest in him and we have to make sure his name's being spoken about, and that's what it was last week, and the more we can do that, the closer he gets.
Ben, sticking with the heavyweights, you had a certain Fraser-Clarke rock up to the most recent Matchroom show this past weekend in Cardiff. Fabio Wardley, talk to me about that. There were some comments from you which suggested that maybe it wouldn't happen next and you wanted him to face somebody else. Is that different now? Do you want the fight next, Fabio versus Clarke?
It's not that. We've been trying to negotiate the fight before the purse bids. It came as a surprise to us, a purse bid, to tell us when and where, because it shouldn't have come after 6 fights. I don't care how good Fraser-Clarke is. That's not a normal when you've got fighters at 10, 11 fights. So when it's made, of course, it puts a time, but the fight was already being negotiated. It will continue to be negotiated. Fabio Wardley is a free agent at the moment, and we would like to make that fight. It's as simple as that. Our job is we believe Fraser-Clarke is box office and potential box office potential, and he's lucky we've got these big fights at British level, and we just want them to be as big as possible for him. We're confident he wins. He could have fought some of them, and I don't want to be disrespectful. What Fabio Wardley has done from a white-collar background to where he is incredible, and that's why we love this sport. But Fraser-Clarke would have felt like he could have taken them in his first fight. This isn't about that. This is about making sure Fraser-Clarke has the most successful career possible, becomes a superstar in the heavyweight division, just like when we see Anthony Joshua, Tyson Fury. We want to see heavyweights coming through, new stars. We believe we've got the potential with Fraser-Clarke. The interest in his career after 6 fights is ludicrous, but it's great. Whatever people think, it's great, and that's all it is. We have Fraser-Clarke's best interest, and we want him to take the biggest fights and get the most for it.
If you're negotiating, does this fight come to a successful conclusion without purse bids?
It could easily do, yeah.
Does it happen next?
If we won the purse bid, we would take till September. We want to build a big fight. We want Fraser-Clarke to be headlining on Sky Sports in a massive fight.
With that in mind, then, obviously some people have been critical of Fraser's opponents. I've asked you about it a few times. What level, what name of opponent do you think would be a good interim opponent before a Fabio Wardley fight, which could help build that?
It's not just interim opponents. We want him to. This isn't about who he's fighting. We want him to experience different styles and different rounds. We have the same guys and matchmakers that guided Anthony Joshua's career, guiding Fraser-Clarke's. He's fought guys, Bogdan Ninu, Bracamonte, Sokolowski, fighters that you expect to get rounds against and you expect to get your experience against. And he's blown away a few guys. He's had a couple of last-minute opponents right at the start of his career, but now he is getting towards the deep end, and we will see him in big fights. But as I say, our job is to make sure Frazer-Clarke's the biggest star possible, and he's headlining fights this year. So it's a headline fights. He's going to be in some big fights, and that's our job, and that's what we've been focused on. And as I say, Fabio Wardley was top of our list since February, and will continue to be that.
Is Wardley-Clarke a headline fight?
On Sky, yeah. Yeah, I think that Frazer-Clarke has an opportunity now to really break into the big time of the heavyweight division, and that comes from big nights and headline nights.
All right, Ben, we'll leave that there now. Leave the shoot off, and you can finally enjoy some downtime this evening. Thank you.
Cheers, bro.